Hey guys, it's Danny. Okay, so many of you asked me if I decided to switch to clay pots only and why I did this. So I think it's better to make a video about it as it's a complicated one and needs a whole discussion to explain the big picture. First off, let me just say that this setup will not work for everyone, and I still don't recommend clay pots to beginners or to traditional setups. I spent the last 6 months planning it in my mind, so I'll tell you how everything works and hope that some things might apply to you too if you are interested in this type of setup. Also, I cannot say which are the pros and cons, so I'll let you decide what could be good or bad for you. So first off, clay pots are not transparent and you cannot see the roots or when the medium dries. This is especially tricky for beginners, so this might be the main drawback for many orchid growers. However, this isn't really a drawback for more experienced growers. With time, we learn to read the external signs by looking at the orchid and also by smell sometimes. And we have an idea of what's going on with the roots just by looking at the orchid. After a few years that I've grown orchids, I can say that I don't really need clear pots. They do help, but they're not essential for me to know when things go bad inside the pot or when I need to water. And I'm not saying this to brag or anything, but each and every one of us has the possibility to learn orchids and to know if something is wrong just by looking at them. We don't need clear pots, really. And if I'm confident enough that I can tell, anyone can. Then, clay pots don't have ventilation holes. Well, they actually don't need them. They're already ventilated due to the process of production alone. Clay pots are made of a porous material. It breathes, so ventilation holes are really not needed. You can say that they will dry super fast in a very dry and warm climate and slower in a humid and cool environment. So wouldn't they be better suited in a more cool environment perhaps? Yes, they would. However, I'm not using them with traditional bark. So let's talk about how they work with my medium. So as I was saying in a previous video, which by the way you can find in the description below, I'm using full inorganic medium, mainly seramis and hydroton. Seramis is very water retentive. Hydroton, not so much. By adapting the ratio of seramis and hydroton, I know how much water my pot will hold. If I would like to hold its weight in water, I would just use seramis. But I could potentially suffocate the roots if I water too often. This will not happen in a clay pot. As I was saying, it breathes without ventilation holes. So when I choose to properly soak the seramis, I will never have issues about too much sogginess, as the pot itself helps with water evaporation more than you might imagine. Speaking about evaporation, remember the coologs? They keep the close environment cool by evaporative cooling. The material they are made of is clay. Clay pots work the exact same way. Due to the constant evaporation, they will be cooler than plastic pots. The more water evaporates, the cooler they are. I actually did a test and I placed my measuring device somewhere in the greenhouse, and this is what it read. Then I placed it among my orchids, and the shift in measurement is dramatic. Notice how much cooler and humid things are in the vicinity of the pots and orchids. In a subtropical country like the one I live in, this is very useful. I don't need to rely on cooling devices as much as I would with plastic pots. So at this point, you can start to see how things might apply to some people while other things might not apply. You might not benefit from evaporative cooling. Now, you might know that epiphytic orchids photosynthesize at a root level. How will they do that if the pot is opaque? Well, I think the question is, do they really need to rely on it? The main organ responsible with photosynthesis is the leaf. If an orchid has leaves, the secondary organs will not produce a noticeable quantity in comparison to the leaves. The mechanism is efficient only if an orchid has no leaves, in which case roots help. And for some species that don't produce leaves, it is essential for the roots to receive light. But for the orchids that I grow, if they have enough leaves, I notice there is not much of a difference if roots photosynthesize as well. Now let's talk weight. Plastic pots are very light and can be bumped over instantly. For this reason, I resorted to decorative containers in the past. I now don't need them anymore, as clay is very heavy. Coupled with the clay medium that I use, there is no chance of orchids falling over, unless they are monsters, like vandas. But then we can adjust this with some heavy rocks at the bottom. Now, the decorative containers had a double roll. I soaked my orchids in them. I don't need to soak my orchids now though, as seramis and even the clay pot itself are water wicking. I only use a small quantity of water at a time to fully saturate the medium, so decorative containers are really not needed anymore. Let's talk root damage when repotting. You might know I never used clay pots in the past due to the fact that the roots attached to it like crazy. So what changed now? Well, the medium changed. The reason for regular repotting is not growth rhythm of the orchid, but the degradation rhythm of the medium. Sphagnum moss degrades in about 1 year, bark in about 2 or 3 depending how much it stays moist. So repotting every 2 to 3 years is a must in most cases. With inorganic media, this is not an issue anymore. If orchid roots are not disturbed, they can remain viable for years and years. I will not need to repot due to medium decomposition anymore, so I will repot when the orchid grows. Or will I? Being that clay is very porous, I can simply place the small pot in a bigger pot and place some clay media around and voila, problem solved. And how fast do orchids grow really? Some take 5 years to fill up a pot, some never do, like the vandas. So the problem of root breakage is pretty much eliminated by the inorganic medium, at least for many more years, as long as the roots stay alive. And why would they even die? There is so much ventilation, so little acidity due to the clay medium not breaking down, so many air pockets due to the fact that clay medium doesn't compact. I would really have to mess up to kill those roots. But let's say the roots went bad. How will I know if I cannot see them? Well, taking a sniff right after I water my medium will tell me everything I need to know. Rotting roots have a horrible smell. If the smell is not bad, all is well inside. To these main ideas, I can also include osmosis water. Since it is produced in limited quantities, it's fitting to not soak the pots and use smaller quantities. I can also add the control over how I water, from above or from below, and how much water I can leave in their trays when I go on vacation or visit my family for a week, without needing to worry about too much sogginess and not enough ventilation or too little water and dehydration. To end the subject, there is also the aesthetic aspect. When I entered my balcony, I was welcomed with a multitude of colors, coming from the decorative containers sadly, not the flowers. I don't want my eyes to be distracted by that anymore. I want my gaze to settle on the beautiful green foliage. And the pop of colors should be flowers, not decorative containers. This is just a personal taste, it's just what I like. It's not about right or wrong. Of course, with time, the clay pots might get marks and white deposits, but they will never be too colorful to distract my eyes from the orchids. Now, of course, this is all theory. How will this pan out? Only time will tell. There are still questions unanswered, like salt deposits, ease of cleaning, molds or algae. I personally think I won't have problems, but that's just a speculation. So for this, we will need to wait quite a bit, but luckily I share everything on video with you, so you'll be the first ones to find out how things work. Okay, hope this shed some light on why I switched to this method and how I thought about making it work. I think that if one of the variables disappears, things might go really bad really fast. Clay pots and sphagnum moss is a no-no, due to how fast the moss breaks down. Repotting from clay pots every 2 years again is a catastrophe. Using bark with clay pots in a dry and warm environment is madness, but place the correct variables and things should theoretically be bliss. Don't worry though, plastic pots will make some appearances as well, they are not completely retired. Okay guys, thanks for watching, hope you found this useful. Don't forget to rate this video below and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see daily orchid videos, and not only orchids, different plants as well. Also, feel free to leave me a comment below. I read them every day and I try to answer to everybody. If you click on the left side of your screen, you're gonna be directed to orchidnature.com, where you'll find care sheets, identification sheets, and also you can talk to us in the forum section. And on the right side of your screen, you can click to watch another orchid video. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye!